Oh, let's do it. Let's get my fog out first. Come on. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Remind podcast. I'm Dr. Ashleigh Moreland and I am joined by my beautiful co-host and friend, David Masterton. Hello. Dave. Change of scenery for me today. Bit of a different background.
Absolutely.
But we are here.
Yep, brick by brick. I can see behind you is lots of bricks. Very, very different.
We are here, ready to roll.
For those that take a very keen interest in my background would notice there's a slight change, because probably for the first time ever since recording this, I'm sitting down as opposed to standing up. Ooh. So the camera's at a little bit more of a down angle. So for those not watching, have a look at Spotify. We're now uploading videos and YouTube. Check out the video. You'll see me sitting down.
Super excited for today's topic. This is something that was Dave's idea. But as soon as he mentioned
it, I went, yes. By the way.
Yeah. As soon as he mentioned it, I went, yes. It's something that I have done keynotes on. It's something that I have done workshops on, and it's something that comes up again and again and again. And it's when Dave mentioned it, he said acting good versus being good. And I talk about this in the context of doing versus being. And the way that I kind of talk about this is, you know, there are things that we have to do in our lives. And I'll just put it down to the most simple day-to-day tasks, like doing the dishes. I can do the dishes with a heart posture of frustration and resentment and anger and, you know, maybe even apathy. So I'm being all of those things while doing the act of the dishes. But from the outside, it looks exactly the same if I am doing the dishes with a heart posture and state of being calm and peaceful and present and all of these beautiful things. And so a lot of people struggle to differentiate the doing, and they even try to do self-care, or they try and do better relationship, or they try and do all the things that makes their partner happy, or that makes their kids listen, or whatever it might be, right? That they've got to do all the right things. It's this real performance acts of like works. We've got to be worthy through works. When actually sometimes doing all those things is not the answer. We have to have a level of inner transformation to change the way that we are being while doing them, or shift our heart posture. And so that may or may not be resonating or in line with what you were thinking when you mentioned, you know, acting good versus being good or doing what's right. But I feel like there is a big synchronicity there, because I grew up doing the right things, mainly because I didn't want to get my butt kicked. Like I had to do all the things that everyone around me expected of me, or kept them happy or pleased them. So do the things that are pleasing to others, or, you know, to parents or whatever, but not necessarily doing what was right. Good follow on from the moral injury thing as well, I think.
Actually,
I don't know if we spoke about this, or if this was part of my implosion that I had afterwards. But I realized how many times in my early life, after recording that, I realized how many times in my early life I actually behaved in a way that didn't align with what I knew inside was right, just because I wanted to fit in.
Well, boy, you don't need to look too far around to just find examples, right? So the right thing. What is the right thing? It's like, is the right thing, especially in a dynamic that you raised just now. You're a child, there's a parent. The right thing is to make sure they're happy. Is the right thing to make sure they're not triggered? Is the right thing what they tell you based on their perception of values is how you need to behave? Or is the right thing how, like you just said, how you feel inside? Like, it's that sort of knowing, as opposed to what you've been educated or what's been instilled. There's this knowing that's growing in people. And it gets confused a lot, where the right thing is very different. And traditionally it was the right thing to do is respect this person. Why? Well, because of their inherited status, right? If you go
just because of their age, like respect your elders was a big one when I was growing up.
You go back to our parents, right? Respect your elders, be seen and not heard, right? That's our parents coming down to our parents. And then, our parents would have felt a certain way about that. Again, cue the inner knowing. So maybe that improved a bit. But has it improved enough so that it's in complete alignment with what that child's feeling? Maybe not. Go down another generation. And we see that gradual improvement, because if you go back, hundreds of years, kids would have been treated reasonably differently, or the societal expectations of kids, societal expectations of parents, very, very different. And so I'm seeing a lot of it, and especially it's like, what's the needs of a child? Because I can feel this going into like a child-parent relationship dynamic. What's the expectation of a child? What's the expectation of a parent? And then on top of that, with those expectations, there's a right and a wrong, because you have to have an expectation at the start to identify what's right, and there needs to be some sort of metric, some sort of judgment. And so it might come down to the doing. Okay, to be a good parent, feed them nutritiously all the time, make sure they do this, so go to school, make sure their room is clean. I don't know, what else? Because if you don't get these things done, then other parents will look at you and go, well, you're not a very good parent, are you? As opposed to, how's a kid feeling? Are they smiling? Do they feel safe? Do they communicate? Do they do these things? And so
100%.
If you have a parent in this case who's so worried about showing that they're doing the right things, okay, that's good. Nutritious meals is important for a kid. Instilling the fact that they can keep a clean room is a good trait to have. Attending school is a good thing. Now, whether you believe in the curriculum or not, generally a kid going to school is a great barometer of how are they actually functioning in day-to-day work. If they're not going to school, then there's an issue. But if they're going to school, whether they like it or not, I don't know too many kids that actually lick their lips every morning ready to go to school. Like, let me at it.
Sorry. Right. My kids are like that now.
Oh, really?
Only
That's
since
awesome.
we changed schools. Since we changed schools, honestly.
Yeah, brilliant.
Their whole school life transformed when they had a different environment to go to that was actually emotionally and psychologically safe.
Isn't that awesome?
Completely changed.
Yeah. Isn't that awesome? But the change necessarily wasn't the curriculum. It was exactly what you said. It was
the environment. It was the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh wow, that's such a powerful word, atmosphere.
Environment, atmosphere, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because that's where we spend all of our time, in our own atmosphere, our own environment, and as different factors. So when you look at how do you judge someone for being good, well, outside of a subjective feeling in one's gut, if someone's doing well, it comes down to the judgments. Okay, you need to keep your house clean, you need to make sure they're fed. all the time, and then big judgment over is it chicken nuggets versus a salad with, da 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 da. And going to school, if they're not going to school, it's a barometer of they're not doing well, but is there any work being done in the background versus someone being forced to go to school because they're just absolutely too shit scared to, what are the consequences? It's a really big thing on, now you've got this child working on or working through not what they feel is right for them because they have a feeling, and if the parents' judgments are different, or if what is required from the parents is different, which is the child feels, I don't feel safe, and the parent says, you are safe. You just need to act it. You're just being whatever it is, right? Apply some sort of
just
thinking.
Being difficult or...
Yep. You just need to try harder.
Totally.
You just need to do... And then you've got...
Oh my gosh! Feel the sphincter tighten on every single person who was late diagnosed ADHD.
Exactly.
And then try a bit harder.
And then suddenly you're stuck in this whole paradigm of I can't trust my own feelings because I feel this way, but I'm being told I'm wrong. And then they lose touch with themselves. And then you look at the parent and then go, okay, so from a parent's point of view, are you, and this has to be an honest question, are you more worried about how you're perceived as a parent than how your child feels? Because that's fucking confronting for any parent.
It really is.
Because I find for myself, they're sort of like, well, if someone was to come into my house today and see, my kitchen, my lounge room, some days I'm there going, I would not be impressed. Or if some days, if people knew that my kids spent X amount of hours on technology, oh, geez. Or whatever it is. I wouldn't know one parent that wouldn't have one of those thoughts about something, not maybe those.
It's shame.
Exactly.
So that in itself is shame.
Well, absolutely. But again, it's like, who are we competing against? Who are we, what is this thing that we need to prove that we're good parents, or that there has to be this almost Instagram parent, hashtag best parents ever, hashtag parenting goals, hashtag my kids are wonderful. Like, you could create an Instagram reel of fake stuff, which is, 0 screen time, and they do this, and the kids are high achievers, et cetera, et cetera. But then who's it for? So
totally. I love that question. It's so, I don't even think I shared this with you. This was really, really powerful. And the backstory to this was I used to be suffocated with shame when my son would have these meltdowns. And this was I think this was even before he was diagnosed ASD. He would have these epic meltdowns. And the worst one that ever happened was in a shopping centre. So we went into Big W or Target or something, and it was a couple of days before Christmas. We'd been out all day. I knew he was completely cooked, and I had a newborn at the time. She was only a couple of months old. It was her first Christmas, so
wow.
She was born in August, so she was only a few months old, and I knew that I just had to duck in and get this one thing. And obviously we've gone in there. It was super, super stimulating. We had to walk through the entire shopping centre to get to this shop. And lots of flashing lights, lots of noise, Christmas carols, lots of people everywhere. And it was just so overwhelming for him. And so he was already overstimulated. I was already stressed and super overwhelmed. And he asked for a Hot Wheels car. And I had said, no, we're here to get this one thing. We can't have a Hot Wheels car today. Anyway, so this whole tantrum broke out over this Hot Wheels car, and I was at the register trying to pay, and I had a baby in the trolley and a kid literally on the floor, throwing the biggest meltdown of your life, literally screaming as if he was being murdered. And the crazy thing was, everyone who was surrounding, including all the staff, there was about 9 staff who came and sort of surrounded us and all these people, and no one actually helped. Like, they didn't help me. They didn't help in any tangible way. And I ended up trying to pick this kid up who was still kicking and screaming, and he wasn't in his body anymore. He was completely gone. And so I scooped him up under my left arm, literally held him like a football, and he's kicking and screaming while I'm trying to push a trolley with a baby in it through this shopping mall where everyone was looking at me. And I remember just feeling so isolated and so alone, and really, really conscious of the shame that I felt of how his behaviour made me look as a mum. And I had someone say, that kid needs a good flogging. And
that's one way to stop it, I
just
suppose.
Comments like that. And this elderly lady, she's like an earth angel, just as I was coming down the ramp to the car park. So I'm pushing a trolley down a steep ramp. The baby's in the trolley. He's under my left arm, and he's kicking and screaming, and his shoe came flying off. I couldn't put him down. I couldn't let go of the trolley. Didn't have a spare hand to get the shoe. And this absolute earth angel elderly lady came up behind me, picked up the shoe, grabbed the trolley, pushed it to the car, and said, "Sweetheart, keep going. You're doing really well." And I feel emotion come up even just sharing that story. But that was the first time I remember being consciously aware, maybe just because of the intensity of the situation and the volume of eyes on me, like just the sheer number of eyes that were on me, and that suffocating fear of judgment of what everyone must have been thinking, not only of my child, but like he was some naughty boy, which wasn't the case. And also what his behaviour meant for me as a mum. And I remember, that was the first time I had conscious awareness of how I parented, and how the fear of judgment and opinions of complete strangers affected me as a mum in not being able to quote unquote control my kids in a situation or environment that was completely out of my control, and to be perfectly honest, his. And now fast forward that to last week. He was participating, so he just moved up in a class at jiu-jitsu. He's gone up to the next level, so he's gone from the oldest, the strongest, and one of the best in the younger class to now the smallest, the weakest, and the least experienced in the next class up.
Gotcha.
His first training session, he was getting absolutely dominated, completely dominated. And now, what would my preferred response be for him? To take it in his stride, to get back up, to have resilience, to shake people's hands, to still acknowledge them. Now, that's
see
what
the opportunity of growth. Yeah.
So yes, and so if he was acting good, that's exactly what I would have seen. And instead, I saw a kid who was having a tantrum, ultimately. Every single time, every single match, he would lose, and then he would smack his hand down, and, he was so caught up in his own moment that his teammates would go to, fist pump or shake his hand or something, and he was so in his own little world in that moment that he wouldn't even see their hand, so it looked like he'd just kind of fobbed them off.
Yeah, gotcha.
Anyway, this went on for the whole 45-minute training session, and I was really conscious of what did I feel in my body, knowing that all the other people who were there were witnessing what I was seeing, and also a level of fear of judgment that I used to have around, especially with the work that I do. Does that mean my kids are held to a higher standard because aren't they supposed to have this super conscious present mum? Which it was so powerful to be able to remain fully present with him in that and simply meet him at the level of his feeling. That he didn't have to act in a certain way in order for me to not spiral into my own shame spiral. Because as soon as I start commenting to him on his behaviour, or if I start trying to correct him without that connection, or if I start acting out based on my shame, guess what I'm perpetuating? Shame in him. And so that was, anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean,
a little bit of a tangent, but...
No, because it really feeds into what does, acting good versus being good. It's like, okay, for us, we've defined in this moment that being a good person means that in the face of adversity or in sportsmanship and things like that, when you lose, you have to be gracious about it. Now, that is a wonderful trait to have. But I challenge you to find someone at the top of their game, right, in the heat of the battle, and I'll take Formula One drivers as an example. If you find a Formula One driver who is ecstatic to be second or third when they know they can win, they've lost it completely, because that's passion, right? And so what we have as a parent is that my child at all times, especially in front of other people, must display these things that show that I'm a good parent. And for me to show I'm a good parent means to make sure that they act very sportsmanly, regardless of the fact that they've just been in a physical situation, adrenaline's fucking pumping. They actually want to win because it's a competition.
And their feelings in their body are real.
That's it. And all of that. And we're sitting there with none of this going on, going, but you need to be sportsmanly. And then if we shame them into, I'm so disappointed in you because you just absolutely fobbed that person
Go over there
off.
right now and shake their hand.
Exactly, right? And so what they're feeling is, oh, shit, what am I supposed to do? I've got all these feelings, I've got this emotion, I've got all this happening, and now I've just done something wrong. And now I'm feeling the disappointment of my parents. So how am I going to deal with that? Am I going to shove that down and go, well, the disappointment was warranted because I really did fuck up? Or is it that they think to themselves, hang on, this doesn't feel right. I can't tell you why it doesn't feel right. It just doesn't. So you know what? I'll just squish it down and then try and let the future, me deal with it. So it really is relevant, because at the end of the day, being a good person isn't just about having these judgments. It's, you're building. You are building your personality. You're building your understanding. You're building your resilience. You're building awareness.
Capacity.
You're building capacity, right? And how do you do that? You don't just give birth to a fucking 40-year-old person, do you? Right? That is built.
Dave, to be perfectly honest, I've met many 40-years who don't have any of those things. So no, not only do we not want to physically give birth to a 40-year-old, but also there's with age does not come necessarily wisdom or emotional intelligence. And I think that's an important thing I think for a parent, for me to be able to effectively nurture and coach my child to be able to recognize the feelings in their body, to know that they're okay, to know what to do with them, and then to know what the follow-up is after the feelings in the body have been processed, that requires me to be able to, first of all, deal with the shame that is driving me to want my child to make me look good, or to make me look or feel like I've done a good job or done what everyone else expected me to do. I need to deal with that within me. And then, like the situation with my son, it was really, really cool actually, because he had tears in his eyes. He was really struggling. And, we got in the car and he said, I don't want to talk about it. And I said, okay, sweetheart, no worries. And then we got home and he was really, really showing me that he was struggling. And I said to my husband, I sort of gave him the eyes and was like, And I said to him, I went into the kitchen and I very quietly said, just give him space, just leave him. And so we did, we gave him space. I don't even remember if he ate dinner that night. He might have just gone to bed.
Gotcha.
And I said to him, you know, what are you feeling in your body? When I'm feeling really big feelings, I like to get in the car, put really loud music on and just scream and get it out of my body. And sometimes I cry and sometimes I yell and sometimes I do all this. And I handed him the key and I said, if you want to go to the car and you want to get it out of your body, you absolutely can. And he looked at me and handed the key back and said, no, I just need some space. And I said, okay, awesome. I'm here for you when you're ready. Now, it turned out that night, he wasn't ready yet. And so we got home, like, let's say 6:15. He ended up going to bed. The next morning, I was in the kitchen making breakfast and he came out and he just goes, Mum, thank you so much for supporting me the way that you did last night. It really means a lot to me. And it was so awesome. But then what happened was we were able to all have a conversation around how it does feel hard to lose and it does feel hard to, you know, move up and feel powerless and all this sort of stuff. But I said to him, you know, I had a coach when I was a kid who would never let me win. If I was ever in a competition where I could compete against girls my own age and I would win, he would put me up. I was racing against boys 4 years older than me who were stronger, who were...
and this is BMX, yeah?
This is BMX, yeah. And so they were bigger, they were stronger, but I was able to help him see that winning is not the thing that's important. It's that every single time we lose, we are learning the next step. We are getting better through every loss, and we're developing that, refining our skills. And we can't refine those skills when we're in situations in sport or life where everything is always easy.
Well, you can either be the best of a really low bunch,
mediocre bunch, or
yeah, and it just depends.
Yeah.
I think what we've forgotten in all of this, and sorry to cut you off, is that competition is competition, and it's designed for there to be winners and losers. But the kids actively go in there to experience that, you know, for the chance of learning, but to also win, because it is a competition.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's a participation, then you just go out there and you do things that don't require that. You know, you can just go and dance by yourself where there is no competition. You can do things that are inclusive, as opposed to competitive.
But I introduced him to the statement that I live my life by, that we either win or we learn. That's it. There's only two options. I don't believe in losing ever. And so we were able to have this whole conversation around it. And then we were able to talk about, so if it wasn't true that you sucked, and if it wasn't true that you, whatever else was going on for him, what might be true instead? And for him it was, that they've had lots more practice than me, and I'm going to be a lot better the more I practice, and like all this stuff. But the really cool thing about that was, obviously then we have to rock up to jiu-jitsu again. And he was able to have a frame of reference, like literally. And when we talk about mindset work, this is effectively what mindset is. It's what are you setting your mind on that changes the way you feel about something. And he was able to change his mindset on what that meant, that even though the outcome didn't change, he never won once, the outcome didn't change, but the way he saw and experienced that outcome really changed. And we just had jiu-jitsu last night, and I said to him, how are you feeling about training tonight? And he goes, awesome, I'm actually really excited. And he had this breakthrough about strategy. And he goes, Mum, for the first time ever, I wasn't fighting, let's say. I don't think it's called fighting in jiu-jitsu, but let's call it
wrestling.
That. I wasn't fighting to win. I was actually fighting and thinking about strategy, because I can't win. I'm not the strongest and I'm not the best, but I was thinking about strategy. And, like in the arm bar, if he was saying that balance is the most important thing, then all I did was when it was my turn, I was making sure I could do everything I could do to stay balanced. And then when it was their turn, I was, instead of focusing on just trying to win, I was actually trying to focus on a strategy of knocking them off balance.
Amazing.
And it was so cool to see he shifted that. And what I wanted to get to was that the first time when he was behaving in that way, where he was slapping his hand down and, really spiraling, through me not projecting shame, I opened up an opportunity for coaching and growth. And that meant that he didn't have to act in any way for me to be okay. He could act out his feelings, which, although not for a second condoning, not for a second am I saying that slapping your hand down and fobbing off teammates is okay. But what I am saying is that an expression of an emotion that leads to growth and leads to healing absolutely is. And every session since then has been fist pumping, has been shaking hands, has been talking about, what they're doing and responding completely differently. But it required for me to not have shame, for him to have to appease, for that to happen.
Yeah, that's incredible, because as you were talking, it led me through a series of thoughts, which is, at the start of all of this, do we want our kids to have a good sense or a healthy respect for sportsmanship when they're competing? 100%, right? And so when a kid acts out in a way that doesn't do that, then if our shame is triggered, we're going to say to them, stop, right? However, the having a sense of good sportsmanship when competing is something that's built over time. And the first step is, when someone's competing, you cannot get rid of the emotion around someone who is passionately competing in something. It's to be able to process that emotion. It doesn't get rid of it.
That's right.
You never get rid of it. So and what your son displayed was the fact that, okay, I have this big emotion and I'm letting it out. Great. Because if there was a shame response from a parent that says, you are acting like a brat, you need to be better, I'm disgusted, I don't want to look at you, go to your room, right? That kind of thing.
You embarrassed me. You brought shame on the family.
Oh, yeah. Tasty. What you're doing is you're saying that emotion's bad, and a good sportsman does not have that emotion. So therefore it's easy for them to feel that way. So guess what? You're wrong. However, they need to be able to process that to then move through to then how they respond to it. But let's just say we go down the path that many have probably felt, which is, I feel ashamed, you shouldn't be doing that. My goal as a parent, with your best interest at heart, is to be a good sportsmanship. I just don't know how to get you there. So any act that you have that contradicts that, I'm just going to whack, either emotionally, whatever it is, punish, shame, da-da-da. And so what then happens is there's this build-up of, I'm doing a crap job, but I love the sport. So I'm going to put I don't know how I'm going to do it, but let's just say I'm going to bottle it. And I'm going to put a real tight cage around it. And I'm going to hold it right in. And, the blood vessels are going to pop. And I'm going to sort of shut down, because that's what a good sportsman does, right? And then how would that manifest? I can't talk about the emotion, because I'm spending a lot of time keeping the cage around this. And then secondly, what's stopping it from it ending up being a punch in, through the wall because of something else that happens? Because they're because newsflash, and I think most people know this, you can't bottle this forever. It will come out. And you can either have healthy ways for it to come out, or it will blow everywhere. So it's about, as parents,
I think
how do we encourage them to go from having that emotion to building those characteristics of what it is to be a good sportsmanship, and telling them it's okay to go through the process of the emotion and da-da-da-da-da.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. And again, this is one of the main reasons why if a parent communicates with me that they're having a hard time with their children or their children's behaviours, I won't work with the child. I work with the parent, because the child, every single child on the face of the earth needs leadership. They need guidance. They need coaching. But most adults don't have the tools or the skills or the resources to be able to meet them at the level that they require and actually coach them and nurture them and lead them. And so what I find as well is that as adults, if we are carrying shame, if we are carrying guilt, if we are carrying our own wounding, then we will make it our children's responsibility to make sure that that wounding is safe, that we are not triggered. And what that does is it actually robs our children of their sovereign experience and says, for me to be okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to look like this, you need to achieve that, you need to perform that, you need to react like that. If someone wants a hug, you must hug them. If someone says hello, you must say hello. If someone, like just all that kind of stuff, because what does it mean about me as a parent if you don't? And it robs our children of those sovereign experiences, but also there's no learning experience in that. It's just simply control. And yeah, I feel like that's by far the most important thing, is if we want to raise our children, or you know what, I'm going to extend it even further. It's not just about children. It's any relationship ever, I've had a season of a lot of couples coming to me and reaching out, and it's really interesting because this is all they know, that the acting good. I want them to tick these boxes. I want these conditions to be met so that I'm okay. But that might look like, I'm not even going to go into examples because that's a conversation for a different day. But what
next
that
episode
ultimately does is it protects our shame. And when we are protecting our shame and outsourcing the responsibility of the protection of that shame to others, whether it is our children, whether it's our partner, whether it's our colleagues, our bosses, our workplace culture, society at large, when we are protecting our shame and making it someone else's responsibility to not trigger it and to make sure that we're okay and we're enough, then we are robbing them of their sovereign experience, and we're actually inhibiting our own healing and growth. So that to me is the absolute recipe, is that children are not born with shame. We instill it, we teach it, we model it, and we don't even know we're doing it. So 100%. If we don't want our children to become adults who have shame and who have a poor sense of self and who, that really critical inner voice, that really harsh, judgmental, nasty, critical inner voice that so many adults have to live with, that is the voice of shame and trauma. That's the voice of shame and trauma. It's the voice that says, what are you doing here? It's the voice that says they don't like you. It's the voice that says, why even bother? Like that is the voice of shame and trauma.
Oh, it's been
so they don't have to act well.
Yeah, it had been an old friend for quite a while, to be honest, because that same voice also leads into the logic, right? It's a very similar sounding voice, right? It's the one that keeps you safe and protected.
Yeah.
But I will say, from a parent, that, the reason I have this perspective now is I went from the other perspective to this perspective, and that gear change was hard. It was a hard gear change.
Well, we call it birthing pains, right?
Yeah, okay. As
It's
a guy,
like it's labour pains.
yeah, okay.
You got to be reborn.
as a guy, I can fully sympathise with labour pains and how it affected me. But and the shame, like when you go from, because I think at the end of the day, and it was really powerful that when I started talking about my journey to certain people and, very clumsily walking through, telling them what I was doing and, throwing out words like, because you got to, if you're not feeling this way, you have to do the work and you have to process your trauma and all that. And I remember one friend just saying, and they looked at me and they go, but I'm a good person. It's like, well, geez, okay, yeah, you are a good person. And we all do things that we feel is good unless we are absolutely calculating to do bad. So in this case, when you are a parent and you listen to this stuff, and let's just say you're listening here and you can feel it in your stomach like you've just been slammed. Like, who the hell are you to say this? I do the best I can. There's absolutely no doubt that you do the best you can. And it's all like, how dare you say that's not good enough? Because I can't do anymore.
There's the shame response.
And now you're judging me. Well, it is a shame response because, firstly, congratulations for watching the video while feeling that, because you are doing the work. And secondly, be gentle on yourself, because going through this gear change is hard. And the ones that go through this and complete this change and push through that and are gentle on themselves. I remember looking myself in the mirror and replaying some of the stuff that I did to my kids when they were much younger, before I had this awareness, and go, had I known then what I know now, I never would have done it. But you have to forgive yourself. You still did the best you can based on what you had, based on the capacity. Yeah. But it's never too late. And don't give up on the fact that it's never too late. Because at the end of the day, people will see change. People will, if you're trying, that's a big part of how someone feels about you. And especially when it comes to kids. Because at the end of the day, they're not built to hate either. But they will hate the feeling of having something inside them, this inner knowing, and being told it's wrong. But if that starts to change and you can meet them where they're at, which I think when you go back to your son's story, he needed that night, you met him where you're at, as opposed to, actually, I need you to sit down, I need you to stop acting like a brat. You have to have dinner, because that's what a good parent will do.
Ooh, that word need,
Absolutely, because I'm doing this for you. Because if you go to school tomorrow and a parent asks you, or a teacher asks you, what did you eat last night for dinner? And my son puts my hand and said, I had nothing because my mum said I didn't have to. Like all this shame. Right?
Yeah.
You met him where you were at. Or you met him where he was at, with the view of not staying there, but to help him, progress him, coach him, show him, model him to what it is to be able to regulate those emotions that come out in that environment, to become the sportsman.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I'm having the fireworks in my mind right now.
It's the 4th of July.
There's the thing that's coming to me is, and I went down this rabbit hole recently around, and I'm going to use the word God. You can replace that word with whatever word you're comfortable with, but the term good. And we are human beings. Now, with that, human is we have a flesh self, being is we have a spiritual self. And with the being good, biblically it says that God created all things, and all things that he created were good. Now, he created us with a nervous system, and he created us with emotions, including the emotions of anger and frustration and hurt and all of these things. Now, we as humans are here for the whole diverse experience, not just the experiences that we judge as good, because there's no such thing as good or bad. It's just what is. And so this is going really deep in a very, very tight timeline because we're about to finish up. But
next episode.
Ultimately, I had this revelation. That if all things are good, then being good simply means presence. Be present to what is without judging whether or not you like it. Simply be present with it. Because, and that was the transformation for me as a parent, is going, I don't have to like it, but I have to be present with them in it until they're through it. And then we can coach. Because any coaching or anything that's happening before the being is me judging it as bad and wanting it to stop because it's triggering discomfort or shame or something else in me. And so, yeah, the difference for me between acting good is the appeasing, it's fawning, it's survival instinct of the nervous system around it has to look a certain way. But being good is that it is what it is because it is, and this is the best I can handle right now, and I don't have any better skills to navigate these big, awful feelings inside of me, the overwhelming feelings inside of me. I'm doing the best I can, which could be better.
Oh, look,
and that's where I feel like that distinction is.
And I've heard it recently, the saying, you know, all I want you to do is to do your best. And when I've said that to someone recently, and I've had the response, but what if my best is not good enough? And then I said, if you ever felt that way with me, it means that I lied.
Yeah.
Because if someone's doing their best and you've said all I need you to do is to do your best and it's not good enough, what they've been told or what they feel or whatever conditioning they've got is, you need to do, I just need you to do your best for me. I need you to do what is best for me. So, and look, coming back to good, like we can go down this deep rabbit hole of polarity, duality, which is, you know, side note, if you subscribe to the fact that we have free will, then you absolutely need to have choice at the center of free will. You need to be able to express in light, in dark, experience both of those, because if you only had a one-sided coin, there is no choice. You only have that. Yeah. And I think that's why when we look at, and I guess sometimes, why is it so hard? Why am I spending so much time in you know, doing good things or showing that I'm doing good things, or, you know, as opposed to feeling good? It's because we have to acknowledge that we do have the choice of the experience to either to have the choice to experience the negative side of this or to have the choice to experience the good side of this. It just so happens when we're born, we are not born, like you said, with the inbuilt negative experiences, unless you go, you know, generational trauma, ancestry trauma, whatever, separate side thing. But we learn it to then come out the other side. We understand the two poles of this. Yeah. But guys, for those where this is hitting a nerve, it really is a big one, and be gentle on yourself. Like the awareness, it's like, I know I've said this before, but it's like our parents, every time, like if we go back and say it's your parents' fault, well, your parents are the origin story of your childhood trauma. That is undeniable, right?
Of your childhood trauma.
Yes.
But it didn't start with them.
Correct. And it's like every time there's been this little bit by little bit where they've tried their best, little bit by little bit by little bit. But now we're coming into this age where the lights have turned on and it's no longer okay for it. Since they tried their best, that's okay. The awareness is turning up, and it's sort of like whether it is the barometer of did your parents try their best, is that a pass or a fail? It's turning in one generation from yes, that's good enough, to actually, are you able to express and do you feel confident? And it's changed, and suddenly that is not, if it's not hitting the mark, it's not hitting the mark. Don't beat yourself up about it. Don't let that discourage you from doing the work. The shame is fucking real. The shame is triggering. It is brutal. Yeah. But once you get through it and you look back, chef's kiss. And give yourself time. But like and subscribe, guys. God, I don't know what we're going to talk about next week, Ash, but I'm sure it's going to be a flow on from from this one. But, you know, comment. I know Spotify now is allowing people to comment, which is great. So drop your comments there. YouTube, as always, hit us up. And, if there's something that's come up for you that you'd like us to discuss in future episodes, let us know.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, guys. See you then.
Till next week. Bye-bye.